Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you guys for being here. I'm excited today. I always love talking about building wealth. Most of you guys know I've been in real estate for many years, investing in real estate, buying and selling, things like that. But I've never really talked about once you build the wealth, how do you protect the wealth and protect your wealth, protect your family. And so I've got two of my good friends on here. Michelle Grant, she's been with my brokerage for a long time. Didn't even know that she was in financial services, and Edwin Avent. So Michelle, let's start with you.
Mhm.
As we get started, the importance of protecting your wealth. When I say that, what resonates in your mind? Protecting your wealth.
What resonates for me is being able to protect your wealth, your family, your loved ones, and safeguarding it while you're building your wealth and all the way through retirement. That's when I think about protecting my wealth. Yes,
Okay.
it's starting from the beginning all the way till the end.
All right. So building the wealth and protecting your wealth for your family. Edwin, same question. When you hear the importance of protecting your wealth for you and your family, what resonates with you?
Well, for me, it goes back to my own childhood, just thinking about how I grew up in a pretty much a single parent household. My mother raised me, my brother, and my sister. And she was a school teacher, and she raised us on the school teacher's salary. And I watched her, even back then, setting aside money. She had insurance, and she was putting money in her 401k, and she would tell us about it. And she owned her homes. So even as a single mother, she owned her home. She was putting money in 401k, and she was telling us about the need to do that. My mother passed away about 20 years ago, and she was able to leave a little nest egg for me, my brother, and my sister. And so I was grateful for that. It didn't make a huge difference in my life at the time that she passed, because I was already an adult and already working, but it set the example for me. And I just thought about generational wealth, right? I just went to school with all these people. I went to this Ivy League school, and I was around all these wealthy people. And I was thinking like, wow, these kids come from generations and generations of wealth. I want to leave that for my family. So when I think about protecting my assets, building my wealth, my wife and I work, but we also invest. And we've been investing in the stock market, and I got into real estate so that we can invest in real estate and begin to build all these assets. Now we're talking about protecting it. Both of us have insurance policies. I have 3. My wife has 3. We have term and whole life policies, just in case anything happens to either one of us. Our mortgage would be totally paid off, and the excess would be added to what each one of us have already saved and invested. We're looking to be able to pass on wealth to our sons. We have 2 sons, an 18-year-old and a 13-year-old. And because we've been able to save and build wealth, we're sending our oldest one to college. He's going to Loyola University here in Maryland this fall. And we weren't really pressed about it. We didn't have to take out student loans. For him, he doesn't have to take out student loans. We're being able to write the check because we invested preparing for this time. And so we're hoping that by the time, we're out of here, when we retire, first of all, we could retire at a younger age. We believe that we'll retire in our 60s as opposed to our 70s, in our early 60s, and be able to live off the money that we've built. And then when the time comes and we may pass, both of our sons will be worth over 7 figures each. And that's where we're looking to build generational wealth. So getting those insurance products, investing strategically, owning real estate, are all the things that we think that we can do to secure the future of our future generations, and hopefully our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren.
Good. And so, Michelle, Edwin talked about a lot of different insurance plans and insurance policies. What role does insurance play in protecting your wealth?
Well, insurance can play, to me, a very significant role, because insurance it helps litigate a lot of risk. And what I mean is the risk of you becoming incapacitated, the risk of of being ill, the risk in case one of your partners should pass away prematurely. And when I think of insurance, that's what it can do. And while you're building your wealth, if one of you all, just like you were saying, Edwin, you and your wife were able to do some things, but if you didn't have things in place, what if something happened to your wife? Right? Okay. All that you wanted to do could go south if you do not have something in place to protect that what you had started. And so that when we don't have a family emergency, and I understand none of us controls tomorrow. And this pandemic should have shown that to us more clearly than anything, is that we don't have control. And that's what insurance does for us, is that it helps protect those goals that we have. We can make sure that they can go all the way to fruition with the use of insurance.
And then Edwin, so we see that insurance plays a major role, or should play a major role. In your opinion, Edwin, in the African American community, why is there such a lack of insurance? A lot of people in our community, they don't have insurance. And why is that, in your opinion?
I think it's largely because of lack of education and exposure. So like I said, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a household with a mother who was, educated. She was blessed enough to go to college and be college educated. And she really paid attention to those type of things. But I think so many people in our community, they're not coming from that background where education has been a priority. I think our schools do a good enough job of preparing our young people when they graduate from high school to know how to manage money and build a future and build wealth and protect wealth. So many people come from a place of ignorance and they just don't know about insurance. And then, like you said, you often say, we're looking on Facebook and somebody got a GoFundMe, thing going on to bury their loved one. If they had prepared, they would have had a final expense policy, or they would have had a bigger insurance policy that they bought at a younger age that would have been worth several hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I think the number one thing is really education.
And so, Michelle, same question. Education is definitely one reason why there's a lack of insurance in our community. Any other reasons?
Well, like you said, I believe that they don't see it as a financial vehicle for them. They haven't been educated to understand how insurance can be a financial vehicle for them. And like Edwin said, it's just an education piece of it. And quite frankly, a lot of them look at it more, instead of looking at it as a financial vehicle, they look at it as a debt, as another bill, okay, that they have to pay, that they will not be able to actually cash in on personally, right? That's for when I'm not here. But there's so many different policies out here that can be able to not just at death, but be able to protect them, and they can be able to cash in now, not to mention have a tax-free retirement. So it's just a lack of education. And nowadays we have different products. It's not like a long time ago, you just had the regular kind. There are so many different products that can be able to allow a family to actually become their own family bank with life insurance.
Absolutely. I think life insurance should be looked upon as preserving wealth instead of a vehicle for final expense. And there are policies that pay for final expense, but as Edwin has said, and I see almost on a daily basis, GoFundMe. People putting GoFundMe on social media to raise money to bury their loved ones instead of having the insurance. I think there's also another myth that insurance is too expensive, and it's really not.
It's not.
It's really not. There's different types of insurance, different types of policies. As you guys know, and I'll let you guys elaborate on this, but there's basically two types of life insurance. There's permanent life insurance, whole life and universal life, and there's temporary life insurance, term policies. I'll let both of you guys expand on that, but the different types of insurance, Edwin, why don't you speak to that?
Sure. The difference between the two types, the whole life or the universal life, those policies typically allow you to build income in it. So as you're paying your premium, it's also creating a cash value over the course of time. That cash value eventually could be something that people might be able to borrow if they needed it in case of an emergency. And they can pay it back at their own pace. Now you're supposed to pay it back, but you can pay it back at your own pace. So you create cash value. So if you have a $200,000 policy and over the course of 20 years, you paid into that policy $100,000, you have a cash value in that and you can access it. Where term insurance is really just set up for a term, maybe for 20 years or 30 years. And all you're trying to do is have enough insurance to cover, say, take care of your family in case you pass, maybe pay off the mortgage or something so that you don't leave your family in debt, but it does not have cash value. Well, the traditional policies in the past have not had cash value. There are some policies that are coming around today that are term policies that say, like mortgage insurance, you could pay into it over the course of time, and at the end of the term, if you didn't need it, you can actually get all your cash back. So that's a newer innovation in insurance. But typically the difference is whole life or universal builds cash value like an investment, and term does not.
And so, Michelle, what are some of the other other vehicles, let's say in the permanent category of life insurance, like IULs and things like that, annuities?
Right.
The importance of them.
Well, the points of there are many I'm not gonna say many, but there are insurance companies out here that have IULs that will not just have a death benefit to it. It's permanent insurance, but it also has what they call living benefits with it. And living benefits means that if they should become chronically or critically ill, that insurance policy will pay them, and it will allow them to be able to build tax-free retirement. And that's very important when you know in later years having tax-free in retirement, because you don't want, you know, how much income you have coming in will dictate how much you pay in Medicare, you know, things like that. So you can get one policy that can help you in case you die. It will protect your income, but in case something happens to you, you need income also. So it would also, it takes over that fact of it. So that's what I love about what we have with the IULs. And if you wanted to borrow against it, you can borrow from it, and it pays you interest. But even if you borrow from it, the way you take it out, it will still pay you as if you had 100,000 in there and borrow 50,000, it will still pay the interest on there as if you still had $100,000 in there. Mm-hmm. Okay, so those are things that our community, they don't understand, that life insurance is the greatest financial vehicle that you can use into creating and protecting your wealth.
You know, and to tag onto that, as Michelle said, there are people, and particularly wealthy people, who use this strategy all the time. They buy these types of policies where they have this huge cash. They put a lot of money into this insurance policy, and then as they retire, they can borrow that money. Say they want $60,000 a year to live off of. They can borrow that $60,000 every year, and they don't have to pay taxes on it. It's their money, right? So they can borrow. So whereas say with say you put money in an IRA or something like that, and it might be tax-free money at first when you put it in, but when you take it out, you got to pay taxes on your money. Mm-hmm. When you put it in some of these insurance products, you're able to pull down for 10, 15 years off of that insurance policy, and you're not paying any taxes because you're borrowing the money from yourself. And so the only person you owe really is yourself. And so you can decide to pay it back or not. So that's one thing. There are some other insurance policies that I think people need to really look at. One is called long-term care. And so some of these life insurance policies we're selling now have life with long-term care rider. And so what's important about a long-term care rider? I don't know about you, but people in my age group, we're in what's called the sandwich generation. We're taking care of our children, but now we're taking care of our parents, right? And quite often, our parents didn't save enough or have long-term care insurance enough to go into a nursing home or someplace like that. So they wind up, we have to take them into our house and we got to take care of them. And Medicare might take care of their medical, but as far as a place to stay, somebody to care for you, you don't really have that. But with long-term care, you can actually set yourself up for in case you came down ill and you needed to go into a nursing home. You're now getting $9,000, $8,000 a month that is coming in to pay your expenses. Because quite often, if you don't have that and you do have to go into a nursing home, one of the things they'll do, if you still own real estate, like you still own the property, they're going to make you sell that house. Like even Medicare will make you sell that house so that they're not paying all of the expenses of you living in this long-term care facility. They're going to make you liquidate all your assets so that you can pay for long-term care. So now you don't have anything to pass on to your children. You don't have any, things to pass on generational wealth because you've had to use every asset you have to take care of yourself. But with long-term care insurance, that can protect those assets and put you in a good place as you get older in case you need that care.
Yeah, that's important.
And so, Michelle, I often get the question, how much life insurance do I need? How much do I need to protect myself, to protect my family, to protect my assets? And so I get varying answers. And so how would you answer that question? How much life insurance does one need?
Well, I used to use what we call a dime method. And that means how much would it cost for you if you died for your death expenses, right? And then the income, how many years do you want to replace your income? And then the M is your mortgage. How much you want to cover your mortgage? And then E is like the other expenses such as college, for your kids and things like that. And when we add up that number, that's what we come up with how much life insurance you should have for your family.
You want to expand on that, Edwin?
Well, yes. I think that particularly like things with term insurance, right? They really, the reason why it's term is you typically get it when you're young because you got a young family, you just bought a home, so your mortgage is still big, your children are small, and you want to plan for their college and things like that. You get term insurance. And then what they expect is over the course of your career, you begin to build other assets. Like we're saying, you're putting money in your 401k. You're in your house for 20 years. Now you got 20 years worth of equity in your home. So now you built other wealth, right? So that by the time your children are grown, they've moved out, your house is paid off, you got enough for retirement, that policy extinguishes. Like you really kind of don't need it anymore because the things that you were trying to protect when you were young have already been taken care of. Your children, your mortgage, their education, and things like that. And so that's one of the reasons why people buy, some term insurance. But I like the formula that Michelle laid out. The dime formula kind of gives you a number, of how much you need. But for most people, just paying off that mortgage so their family doesn't have to be homeless is like enough for them, and they figure that that would give their spouse the opportunity to continue to work and maybe save money for their retirement and have something for the children.
Well, in saying that, in the dime method, we can put that together, but you can do it several different ways, meaning that you can do part of it a term, part of it permanent. And in some of the term policies, we can put a thing where we can say, okay, we're going to get this term policy, but we're going to have a rider in there where you can don't have to show proof of insurability to convert that policy into a permanent policy. Mm-hmm. So you can get all you need with the health you are at this good health, right? And then be able to convert it into something else. And that's one of the things I try to get people to say, get yourself something while you're in the good health. And then you don't have to show that you are insurable later in order to do something else. So so get it while you can, while you're in good health, and then you can always convert it later into something permanent, or when you can afford more.
So Michelle, talk a little bit more about that. So
Mhm.
the question is, at what point in your life should you start buying insurance, life insurance?
If you're going to be buying it, you need to buy it as soon as you're 18 years old. Okay. Now, I would recommend if grandparents, for the kids when they're 1 year old, buy them a life insurance policy. Okay, because you're the owner and you're the grandparent, and you can start building cash in that policy. You own the cash, right? You can do what you want. If you want to pay for them to go there, you have it. But then that child is protected. And then there's childhood illnesses that can prevent them from being able to actually be able to get a policy later. So they're protected now, because within that policy, you can make it so that they can add more to it as they get older later in life. And what I found, I met with a guy. He was a Jewish guy, and he was on Medicaid, right? But he was getting $80,000 a year. Guess where it was coming from? A tax-free insurance policy. So it looks like he has no income whatsoever, but he was drawing $80,000 a year, and that's something his parents did when he was young to be able to have that.
Now, I'd say that Michelle is absolutely right that the younger we can get young people in, the better. But I think it's the exception more than the rule. Probably the average age is people 35 to 70 or whatever are buying insurance, like the vast majority of it. But those people who are really wise and educated do the strategies that Michelle's talking about. Another strategy that you see other communities do that we don't do a lot is I hear of Jewish communities, Korean communities, where the adult children get together and buy like a $2 million policy on their parents, and the premium might be $1,500 a month or something like that. And the 4 children will split that in piece, and each one of them pay $375. And they might pay that $375 per month for 8 years, 9 years, until their parents pass. Well, you think about how much did they really invest to when that parent dies with a $2 million policy, each one of them gets $500,000. Well, their total investment might have been $35,000 over the course of their parents' latter years, but then their parent passes and they wind up getting $500,000. So they make like a $350,000 profit. That's strategies that we never really think about of building generational wealth, right? And so those are the type of things that we really need to kind of bring into our community, that we get to understand those type of strategies as well.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you guys. And so I took out a term policy when I was around 30 years old, like you said, Edwin. And so it was a 20-year term, and not with any type of living benefits or cashback options or anything. It was just a straight term. I probably was paying $80 a month for that term policy. Along the way, I had critical illness, and then obviously I've outlived that term policy, but now it's very difficult for me to get other insurance. I'm not as insurable as I was when I was 30 years old. So I wish that I would have taken out, maybe an IUL, Index Universal Life policy, along with the term or something else. But because of that experience, I took out a Index Universal Life policy, an IUL, for my daughter. She must have been 12 or 13 years old. And so we still have it. She's 23 years old now. I actually stopped paying on that in about 5 more years. And then when she reaches, I think it's 40 years old, she gets like $50,000 or $60,000 a year for the rest of her life.
Wow.
And so I did that because of the experience that I had with my insurance. And so now I have insurance, but it's nowhere near what it could have been because I'm not as insurable because, I had some critical illness that I was able to overcome, but not as insurable. And so what I'm doing personally, obviously you guys know I'm in real estate, so I'm buying real estate and doing some other things, to build generational wealth. But if I would have, honestly, like you said, Edwin, had been a little more educated, 20 some years ago, I would have taken out some better policies for myself. There's some annuities and things like that I will do, and to be honest, have done. But as Michelle said, as early as we can, because we are so insurable and it's so inexpensive, the younger you are, that's really how you build wealth. I've been teaching and coaching real estate investing, which is a wonderful way to build wealth, and I still preach that. But financial services, buying financial services for yourselves. We've talked a lot about indexed universal life policies, IULs, but there's annuities, and there's many, many, many more policies. And so what we need to do, and the reason why I wanted to do this podcast, is really to start that process of getting at least our community educated on what's out here and how we build wealth, and how we build wealth in a way that it can be tax-free for us, and tax-free retirement. I think that's really what it is. I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface on like solo 401ks, Roth, and things like that. But there's a bunch of other vehicles like living trust. Michelle, talk a little bit about living trust.
Living trusts are great to have, because you can now dictate how you want your wealth distributed, and you avoid probate taxes. Okay, and another good thing about trust is that you don't have to worry about your wealth, and you can put provisions in there in case your daughter may get divorced from her husband, that the husband doesn't take her wealth. Certain bankruptcies. So it's certain things. So you're able to actually protect what you have put together, over your lifetime, by putting that into a trust. And it takes a little bit more time to do, but it's so worth it. It is so worth it. In real estate, one of my specialties is dealing with probate attorneys and dealing with conservatorships and things like that. So many things that could be avoided had everything been put into a trust vehicle. And I definitely recommend everyone to look into that, because that's really the transition. There's a saying, own nothing when you die, just could be able to control it while you're living. And that's the key to it, is the control. But don't die owning anything. Have it in a trust.
And so that speaks to asset protection. So you really want to protect your assets. And a worry of mine, honestly, is, I've got a portfolio of real estate. I've got businesses. I only have one child, a daughter. And my worry is for her to marry some knucklehead, and he inherits my empire. And
put it in a trust.
Honestly, so that's what I'm going to do, because I've seen that. I've been actually in real estate sales for a long time, investing as well. And I saw here in DC, this lady, she inherited her husband's really fortune. He had a fortune in Northeast DC of real estate, him and his family. And her husband was the beneficiary of all these acres of land right in Northeast DC, where they built a bunch of houses. He died, and she inherited all of that. There was no living trust, nothing like that. So she inherited his family's fortune. So she marries some other guy, and now this other guy comes along, and he's just selling off everything.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Were you the beneficiary of some of that selling?
I
No,
was
you
close.
probably were.
I was close. I bid on the on a parcel of land that they were selling. I was going to build townhouses right in the heart of Michelle knows where Deanwood is.
Yes.
Right in the heart of Deanwood, and
Wow.
for a very inexpensive price they were selling. And somebody, I gave them list price. This was years ago, and somebody beat me up. Went over list price, but he was just. This dude, this was kind of came out of nowhere, married this girl, and she had all this land and property, didn't know what to do with it. So, we laugh about it, but that's a true story. Now, if the family would have put that in a living trust with instruction, then none of that would happen.
None of that would have happened.
Yeah.
And,
No, you're right.
I was going to say too, Greg, in reference to your question about being insured and how early, because I also sell health insurance, and because of that, the health of our people, okay, makes them a lot of times can't qualify for certain types of policies, and so my with young people, even if you may not have a lot of money, even if it has to be an annual renewable term, get something in place, and we can put a rider to make them guaranteed insurable, so that they can get something permanent later, and it's worth doing that. So get something in place. You don't have to wait till you have everything in order. It's just like they say, don't wait to be happy, wait till you get certain things. Be happy now. Well, start acting like you have wealth and protect it as if it's already there. Start putting some things in place, because that's going to happen. So do it while you're young, do it while you have the health, and put things in place so that, hey, later if your health should change, you still have that guaranteed insurability in place.
And you just never know what's going to happen in life. It's just so important. Edwin, you have an 18-year-old freshman in college. You've got a 16-year-old. Your mother, your parents counseled you. How are you going to start the process of counseling your boys on building wealth?
Well, I mean, it's interesting you should say that. Both of my boys have investment accounts with TD Ameritrade. They also have a Robinhood account, each one of them. And they both have over 5 figures, like both over 30-something thousand each in their accounts. And we started that with them probably about 4 years ago. Of course, we did the seed funding, but we sit them down all the time. So on Sundays, we go over the portfolios, like, how's it doing? Do you still want to buy that? You still want to hold that? And so we're getting them to look at that. And they're kind of like, okay, I want to get back on the Xbox, So they'll come and look at it. But I believe that constant exposure to it and them seeing that they have it, eventually it'll all come together for them. As a matter of fact, the first class that my son that's starting college now, he has personal financial management is the first class. Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 a.m. I made sure that was one of the first classes he got in the first semester of college, is personal financial management, because you're sitting there with this portfolio, but you're really still busy kind of running around, playing with your friends, playing Xbox. And I don't know that prefrontal cortex is closed up where he said he understands, like, wow, I got something that I could really build a fortune with. And so we're coaching them along. And now I'm hoping his college professor is going to help, teach him some even more. And so the younger one is kind of following in his big brother's footsteps. But my wife and I make sure that we pull them down. Let's sit down for Sunday dinner now. Let's look at our portfolios, Okay. But, I think as they're getting older, they're starting to get a little bit smarter. And we do have life insurance policies, like a $50,000 policy on both of the boys. And like you talked about, my older one, we started it when he was young. We finished paying for it for him. So now he has $50,000, for the rest of his life, insurance policy on him. And we're still paying on the younger one. But that one is in place for him as well.
And I think that's good. And I think the more that you continue the conversation, the more that they'll get it. I remember my daughter she would always, from an infant, would come to me to show properties, come to my investment properties, middle schools, high school. She'd come along just because she had to come along. And then towards the end of high school, she just started asking questions. And then all through college, she started asking even more questions. And she would say, "Daddy, how are you paying for my college tuition?" And I would tell her, I renovate a property or flip a property, pay for your tuition. Graduated from college a year ago. "Daddy, I understand it. I want Section 8 rental properties now." She started reading about Section 8 rental properties. All that was born from many, many years ago of this kind of preaching and her just watching. Our kids are watching us all the time. We don't even realize it. But she wanted to buy a rental property. I said, "No, let's buy you a property to live in." So a couple months ago, we bought her a fixer-upper, and it's almost ready for her to actually live in. And now she understands that maybe next year we'll get that rental property for her, or she'll get another property, and this property will be her first rental, where she's going to be able to rent out. She wants to rent out Section 8. She's done a lot of reading on that. So in
this house that you bought and that she bought, did she get one where she could do the basement as an apartment so that she could live in the top two and rent out the basement?
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
Great. So that'll help pay for her mortgage, right?
She understands. And so I try to explain that to her. Years ago, she didn't get it, didn't want to get it. But now she gets it. Because now she's a little more mature. Now she's got to pay bills. And so she knows that rental, that basement, if she can rent it out, it's going to minimize what she has to pay, for the mortgage, for her, HOA dues every month, things like that. So they get it. So I guess the point that both of you guys made earlier, in terms of education, I think is the key. Part of the problem with education is, especially in African American communities, is there's just not enough financially literate people, life insurance people, financial planners. 4% of all financial services people, just 4% are people of color. And so we've got to kind of change that dynamic and get more of us involved so that we can actually go out into our communities and educate. And I think it's just kind of a social responsibility that we all have. Those of us who are educated on finances, all of us have, also have real estate backgrounds. Both of you guys have real estate license and life insurance license, which is just, which to me is just a powerful, powerful, powerful combination. I'm going to debate Edwin one day on having what's more powerful, having a college degree versus having a life insurance license and or a real estate license. We won't debate that now. Edwin.
No, you look, trust me, man, you won't have much of an argument from me. Trust me, the older I get, the more I'm watching the way society is changing and how they're valuing college education, the expense of college education. Sometimes you got to really question, is it worth the investment? Or is it really an investment? Because if the only people really making out, I think, are the colleges and universities. They are making a lot of money. But anytime you're sending young people out into the world with all this debt, they talked about this recently as far as the wealth gap between African Americans and white Americans, right? And they said actually the fact that we've had so many of us going to college and taking on that student debt, that the wealth gap is getting even further because we're starting off in the hole, having to dig out of the hole before we build equity. So, Greg, we may be more on the same page than you might think.
Okay.
There's a rule of 72, and Einstein said, when you understand compound interest, you earn it. And those who don't understand it, pay it. And that's where it talks about teaching our kids. Is that
and it doesn't matter whether you have a college degree or not to understand that.
Right.
You can understand compounded interest, like Edwin said, he's educating his boys on the stock market. That's
Mhm.
compounded interest. Warren Buffett told his wife 50 years ago that because of compounded interest, if he lives long enough, he's going to be the richest person in the world because he understood compounded interest.
Mhm.
And consequently, he was. There's a few people that have kind of surpassed him now. And then they have all the vehicles to protect that wealth, asset protection,
Right.
life insurance policies, things like that. I tell you guys all the time, when someone in our community dies, and we touched on this earlier, we're setting up GoFundMe pages
Mhm.
invested. When
Right.
one dies in the Jewish community, 2 millionaires are created because they're protecting their assets and they're getting
Mhm.
the insurance. And Edwin talked about a scenario where they're paying $1,500 a month. That's true, but then they're also getting it young.
Mhm.
And they're getting insurance young because they understand how to build wealth.
Mhm.
It's not just investing in real estate, investing in businesses, which are great ways to build wealth, but then it's also protecting it and starting at a young age where it's very inexpensive. But even businesses, and we didn't touch on this,
Oh yeah,
but even
that's
business,
another.
where's business partners. Michelle, talk a little bit about using insurance to protect the business.
Well, yes, that's very important because if you have a partnership and that partner should pass away, then what happens to the business? You that business still needs to go on, and so you have I forgot Edwin. What do they call it?
You got key man insurance.
Key man
Mhm.
insurance, exactly,
Mhm.
exactly, and different things to help protect that business. So, and then also the structure of the business. So all of that helps you to protect your wealth and your assets um,
Mhm.
in doing that. Especially if that partner should has a family also, so it helps protect that.
And so I think it's just kind of, we know that there's two ways to build wealth. It's owning a business, um, and it's
Invest.
investing, being an investor. There's insurance for both. There's business
Mhm.
insurance, and
Right.
every business needs to have insurance, different types of insurance,
Right.
workman's comp to protect you if someone falls, your business. Some people, if someone falls and if the business gets sued, that puts a lot of businesses out of business.
Mhm.
Mhm,
And you can
mhm.
have insurance to protect you against that. But then you can also, if you're in some type of partnership, if one of the partners dies, now you've got insurance. Now the business doesn't die along with the partner, just like the head of household. If the head of household dies, now there goes all the wealth in the business. You
Right.
can protect against that partner dying. Definitely protect against head of household passing away. And it's these vehicles that we've talked about.
Even with that when the partner dies, if you get the right type of key man insurance, the remaining partners can take that money and buy out the deceased
This
partner
piece. Mhm.
their equity in the business, so they don't have to necessarily sell anything themselves to pay off the spouse or the the beneficiaries of the ex-partner. They take the insurance money that they got and pay them off for their share, and they retain the entire share of the company.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so, critical illness insurance, disability, life insurance, long term care, those, in my opinion, in terms of protecting your wealth, those four categories are the most important. One might say, it's expensive to
Yeah.
purchase all of them, but in the end, you're actually going to make more money protecting yourself.
Right.
Mhm.
If you think those premiums are expensive now, try living after one of those things happen to you and
And
paying
then
the
try
bill.
it.
Okay, you try that, and you'll see that you would have wished that you paid that couple of extra $100 for that disability insurance, or one of those long term care, something like that, because it can be devastating. It can wipe out your whole family's wealth. One little illness, or you get in a car accident and you don't pass away, and now you're disabled. You can't work. If you don't have disability insurance coming in, you're taking money from your savings and
Mhm.
in your investments, and so you wind up not leaving anything to your family, and you could exhaust all of those resources before you pass.
So Michelle, kind of wrapping this whole thing up. You guys have done a wonderful job. It's good to hear very educated people, especially people of color, speak to finance and preserving your finances and building your finances. Now we've got to go out and preach it to the community. So, kind of in a nutshell, Michelle, what would you like people who are listening to this podcast now, who will listen to this in the future? What are some takeaways you would like for them to take away from this?
Well, what I would like to take away from it, I hope that everyone understands the importance of insurance and that you can use life insurance as a financial vehicle. And then there's the other issue that I've run into. There are people who have policies that don't know what they have. Okay, they were sold to them. They think that it's a regular policy, but it's an accident policy. Okay, I would encourage everyone to at least meet with someone and let us review what you currently have, if you have anything, and also put together a plan to how to protect you now and in the future. And in the future of your family is to sit down with an insurance, a professional agent that can just talk with them. What are your concerns? What are your needs? And we can be able to, at that point, be able to put something together that you can afford to protect your family, because there's so many different products. There's no reason why anyone should not be protected, regardless of your health, because there are some products out here that you can get even though you may have some health challenges. It used to be at one time you had diabetes and high blood pressure and all that. You couldn't get, you still can get a policy. And so just have a conversation. Don't be shy or intimidated, or don't think, oh, I hadn't gotten one. Now I'm 50 years old. It's going to be so expensive. Any time that you get started is the best time. The main thing is to get started. And that's what I leave with.
And so, Michelle, if one wants to get a hold of you and talk a little further about financial services, you're also licensed with health and real estate. You got all these licenses. That's better than going to an Ivy League school.
I know. And look, I don't know. I'm also a licensed public adjuster.
Oh,
so I can understand.
So, Michelle, how does one get a hold of you?
They can reach me. My number is 301-675-7933. I had to think about it. My email is insurance for FORU for anyone @gmail.com. Those are the best ways to reach me. You can text me. I'm getting ready to come up with a new website for all of this, so I haven't got that up yet. So, but right now, those are the best ways to reach me.
And this will be on all of my podcasts.
Yeah. So my email is insurance. It's insurance for FOR anyone @gmail.com. And my number is 301-675-7933. If I don't answer, just leave a message. It'll pop up and I could be able to call you immediately.
And so Edwin, when one looks at this or looks at now or in the future, what would you like them to take away from this podcast?
Sure. And like Michelle I think, get started right now. If you hadn't gotten insurance in the past, but you've been thinking about it, stop procrastinating. Go get it right now, because we don't know what's going to happen. COVID, if nothing else, COVID taught us that lesson over this past year, that now is the time to get yourself protected and protect your children, protect your legacy. And so that's the biggest takeaway. And don't be, like Michelle said, there are policies, even for people with pre-existing conditions. That doesn't just work in the health insurance field. It also works in the life insurance field. There are companies that will cover a lot of things. People with COPD and like you said, diabetes, who might think that I can't get covered would be surprised. We'll be able to help them find a policy that works for them. So my whole thing is don't procrastinate any longer. Get started right now.
Mhm.
And so, Edwin, how does one get a hold of you?
Sure. They can get a hold of me by calling me at 443-226-5118. Once again, that's 443-226-5118. They can email me at Edwin Avent. My name is right there, edwinavent@gmail.com. Or they can reach me at Big Life FS. That FS is for financial services. Big Life FS at gmail.com. So edwinavent@gmail.com or biglifefs@gmail.com. And once again, that phone number is 443-226-5118.
So I'd like to thank both of you. I mean, this has been wonderful. It's a big step for me in terms of talking about financial services. Most people know me as, real estate investing, but I want to start bringing more and more. I think there is a lot of synergy between real estate investing to help build your wealth, but then also financial services to help preserve that wealth. You can reach me at Greg Bennett Invest. I should have a banner here somewhere. Greg Bennett, Greg Bennett Invest. That's my Instagram.
I like.
You can subscribe to my YouTube page, Greg Bennett. This will be on our YouTube page, and it'll be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We need to talk more about financial services. I also want to talk more and more about entrepreneurship. If anyone out there listening to this, if you guys are interested in financial services as a way to have supplemental income, but also learn about the products, but also sell the products. No one's asking you to quit your job, but maybe on a part-time basis, maybe sell financial services. Reach out to me either on Instagram, YouTube. You can also email me. We just launched a financial services company, Big Life Financial Services. So you can go to Big Life FS at gmail.com, biglifefs@gmail.com. If you either want to learn more about financial services for you personally or want to sell, we'll talk to you. All right, you guys. Thanks.
But Greg, I wanted to say one other thing. I guess I forgot this, and it concerns me, and that's why I want to say it while we're here. Even people who say they have life insurance at their job, right? That's great, but if your job goes away, that insurance goes away. Absolutely. And so at least get you a little something while you're at a good age, while you may have some health outside of your job. So that way you can start also building also. So, I know people say, oh, I got insurance. Is that my job? No, get something outside of your job. That's very important.
Great point.
And it diminishes as years go on, especially in retirement. Yes. Those policies diminish. So you need something, even if it's just, a term policy. And as Edwin said earlier, these term policies, they're not your great grandmother's term policies anymore.
Right.
They've got automatic renewals. You can borrow against the terms now. So all kinds of things, cashback options. So things like that. So thank you for that, Michelle. All right, you guys, enjoy the rest of your day. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. Everybody listening.
Thank you, Greg, for having us.
Absolutely. You guys take care. God bless. And we will talk to you guys soon. Have a wonderful day.
Okay, all right. Take care.
Bye-bye.